Now at this point, let's go ahead and maybe modify some of the surface style parameters, maybe give it a little more color. So what we'll do is we'll take a surface style texture and consist of this blue and gold stripes and map it onto those objects. We have a surface style texture, which is an image map, which is just some Egyptian artwork that was scanned, and that becomes a surface style texture, which is then mapped onto the object. We can also create maybe the stone carving type texture that's placed on the object, and we have total control of the mapping parameters. So notice that if it doesn't project onto the object correctly, just simply use the texture mapping tool, click on the object, and we can actually control the size and position of how that surface style texture is applied onto the object. So I just say tile it 1 by 1 time, so it automatically fits right onto the surface of the object. We can also apply surface style textures to individual faces. So I can take the gold texture and apply it just to the one inside recessed surface of the object. Okay, let's create the crook and the flail. Now notice that they are sort of bent and curved in 3D space because they have to match the top contour of the existing geometry. Now what we did is we went back to the original sketch that we started the project with. We went back to the original top half of the split surface. These were both created at the very beginning of the demo here. And what we're going to do is use the curve on nurbs tool, and we're going to use that instead of creating a surface or a hole. We're going to create a curve, and as we sketch on top of the highlighted surface, it's almost like a marker drawing on the surface of a balloon, in which the actual curve is then projected right onto the surface. So as I sketch, notice as I go into a 3D view, you can see that those curves that I created are matching the top surface precisely. Now these are nurbs curves, so I can go in and reconstruct those and increase or decrease the number of control handles that I have on the surface to modify it. For example, in this case, we want one curve to actually go over the top of the other one, so I'll reduce the number of controls and simply grab those controls and move those slightly so that the one curve is on top of the other one. And then from that, what we'll do is draw some 2D cross sections. Here's a couple circles. And going back to the sweep tool, we'll take that 2D cross section and we'll just simply have that sweep along that path. And that creates the flail. And we have this cross section sweep along that path to create the crook. And next, what we need to do is create the actual flail part itself. The top is easy, it's just a sphere. But down towards the bottom here, what we can do is draw a 2D profile and revolve that 2D profile around any line or any axis. And we can modify the parameters to make it faceted, smooth, nurbs, and change any of the revolve parameters, so we can edit and modify that as often as we want. Now in this case, there's actually 3 of those, so we will rotate and copy those. And notice that we do have the make clones option on. So that means that if I were to transform and make multiple copies of anything, I can also clone it, which is really nice because if I were to edit and modify any one of the cloned objects, all of the other clones will also update. For example, let's edit maybe the second one here. I'll maybe flare the bottom out just a little bit, and as I edit that shape, you can see that whatever changes I make, that is then propagated to all of the other cloned objects. For the mask, we'll take the original surface from the beginning of the demo and apply a surface style texture. That looks pretty good, except for the fact that the face is still flat. To give it the 3D facial features, there's a variety of different ways. One way is to use the displacement tool, which allows us to take any type of 2D pixel image, and based on the intensity of the pixel colors, we can actually displace the surface of any object. As we increase the maximum value, we can control how far that image map is displaced off the surface. Now that's a little high, so let's turn that down a little bit, and you can see we can actually emboss 3D geometry using a 2D pixel image. We can also import point cloud data. There's a re-engineering plugin which allows us to import scanned point cloud data and create either meshed or nurbs surfaces that is then threaded through that series of unstructured points. A third way would be to just create a series of 2D cross sections, and we can loft a NURB surface through any number of cross-sectional lines. Now this is a NURBS object, so we can further modify and tweak that 3D form by pushing and pulling on those controls. So for example, if we were to apply that surface style texture again. We can look at the NURBS controls and then reshape and tweak that surface to create the facial features. Now, if we bring that original surface back, we have two different objects here. What we're going to do is take the face surface here, move that down, and place it right about there. And then we'll edit that original surface that we had, and because it's NURBS, we're going to modify that by grabbing hold of these control handles and reshaping that. And I want to reshape this surface so it sort of forms around the Pharaoh's face. So move those controls down, and let's grab this control, push that down just a little bit, and that looks pretty good. Now what we're going to do is trim and stitch these two pieces together. So I can actually click on the outside of the surface of one object, click on the top portion of the other, and trim away the bottom section. And based on the radius that I give it, we can create a nice fillet radius blended edge as it transitions from one surface into the other. And this is one continuous smooth surface, and we'll apply one surface style texture to the entire surface. Now for the chin, what we'll do is create a nice little spline curve that's curled at the end, and we'll go back to our sweep tool, take that 2D cross section, and have that sweep along the line. We can modify the parameters here. We can actually scale it so that that source shape will scale and get smaller as it follows that path. One other variation is a two-source sweep, which allows us to take two different cross sections and sweep them along a single path line. We'll take the mask surface and make it transparent so we can see our path that is sort of projected inside of the other object there. And notice that we can sweep from one cross section into the second one as it follows that predefined path. Now let's return the surface style texture color once again. And what we can do is take these three separate objects and we'll trim and stitch and round the pieces together to make it one single object. And notice that we can actually trim and stitch the two pieces up there, keep the top half, trim out the bottom, and we end up with one continuous object with a nice little fillet radius blend on that piece. And you can see that that is actually fused together as one object.